Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Bookum Show. My name is Kyle Colley, and this is a special episode of Creators Talk Podcast, a podcast for bookish conversations with your favorite bookish content creators. This episode is brought to you by Bookum, the book community's new and best way to host dynamic online book clubs. Download the app and start your book club today at www.bookumapp.com. Make sure to give us a comment, like, and subscribe to this video. My guest today is the wonderful Mia Caven. Mia is the book content creator behind Coffee Corner and Chapters and Pages. Chapters and Pages is an influencer marketing company for bookstagrammers, booktokers, and authors. Mia is a reader, she is an artist, she is a writer, she's a journalist, and she is a music head. Mia, welcome to the Creators Talk Podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I kind of want to start in the music area. I know you're a big fan of music. How does
Mhm.
your music taste kind of correlate with your book taste? Do they have any overlap, or do you see any connection between the two of them?
For sure. I think like the first book that I picked up that kind of took me out of years of a reading slump was Patti Smith's Just Kids.
Okay.
And she is my favorite author to this day. I have all of her books and I love her music. I grew up on her music. Um, I've seen her live doing talks and playing music. And so for sure it does. I don't think as much as I initially thought it would, but there's definitely a crossover somewhere.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
who were some of those heroes growing up, like book heroes? Or I know you said Patti Smith. Was there anything like authors, anybody that you really admired growing up?
Growing up, I think like I just loved anything that was kind of YA. I wouldn't say that I had any kind of like monumental idols that I looked up to. My favorite series when I was younger was Geek Girl, which is insane because that's now turning into a Netflix series. And so, it's like over 10 years since I read that. So it's like really, really crazy. But I think it was growing up mostly musicians that I was kind of idolizing. I grew up with parents who my dad DJ'd, my mum met him through kind of like modeling and they met at Glastonbury, so it was like that they were in such creative, like they were in fashion, like they were in such creative fields. Um, so that influenced me growing up and I literally like was paved the path of like Prince and David Bowie and all those kinds of, Jimi Hendrix, like really like legends, so definitely growing up idolizing was mostly music.
No, I love that because again, like artists and creators, they have a lot of correlation. You kind of put your vision out to the world. You craft it. You open yourself up to criticism if people don't like it. If they love it, then they
Mhm.
praise you. So I think the blending of artistry, creative, being a creator, being a director, they all kind of move in the similar direction. So what kind of got you into like book content creation specifically? What inspired you to start posting books online, and how's that journey been for you?
Honestly, it's still recent. I kind of started doing it, I'd say a year ago now, which is crazy because it still feels like only a few months. Um, I have been online since I was 11, and I've had the account that I have now since I was 11. And the reason it grew so quickly when it began, when I was a child, is because it was like a fan account. So, like you said, it was like music and artists and TV shows and people that I looked up to that kind of started the whole thing. Um, and then I wanted to start to take it seriously. And the advice I kept hearing was, you need to have a niche. You need to have a niche. And I just thought, well, I don't really want a niche. I just want to talk about what I enjoy. So, and I already kind of did that, but I didn't focus on it. It was just my face. And although people, liked that, there's pictures of me, if you scroll down, of like 1,000 likes and it's just a picture of my face. It's like I wanted that connection of who I really am and people who also enjoyed what I enjoyed. So instead of taking the route of this is my niche, I took the route of what do I actually love and what do I enjoy. And that's always been reading, it's always been writing. And I felt like also there was a community with Book Talk, Bookstagram, BookTube that I don't think is really present with music or movies unless you're like a fan account. So I feel like it was the perfect entrance to my passion, really, to like showing part of myself.
And did you start as a bookstagrammer, or were you more a YouTuber or booktuber? Where did you start kind of doing your content?
I started it on Instagram. So I've been on Instagram as a fan account when I was a kid, and then that grew into like just content about myself because I basically grew up with the influencer becoming a thing. And then I started to do book content on YouTube, and that started to do quite well despite YouTube being the place I have the least following. Um, and then I kind of thought, well, I like it so much that I'll start doing it on Instagram. And it's become really, really positive on Instagram, like quite a decent growth in following and community. And I do it on TikTok as well, but I feel like that's harder to gather a lot of people's attention for a long time.
The the transition from fan accounts to building communities and creators is so crazy. I've known so many people that had these huge pages and then they like run big communities still. So that train that I don't know even what you call it, that skill that you build at a young age actually just kind of is like a really unique thing for helping you build community. So when it comes to community and engaging with your audience, how do you think about that?
um I always think about who I am as a person. I know that a lot of people kind of, when they're in my position, think about what do people want to see, what do people expect from me, but I try to flip that around because I think if you do that you'll burn out. So I think the best advice that I have for myself and for everyone who's in my position is to post what you want to post, because I think if people follow you, they follow you for a reason. And they, if you're someone like me who posts their face and their personality so much and is so open, then they're going to stick around for that. So I think, yeah, I think just being true to yourself and showing personality, because like there's such thing as like faceless accounts,
Yeah.
and it's quite common with books especially. And I think people think that if you do that you can't show personality, but that's not true at all. You don't need a face to have a personality. So I think, if you're funny in real life, be funny online, like share memes. Like it doesn't really matter how it starts or where it stems from. If I can go, oh, that sounds like something so and so would say, then you've immediately got my attention, and you've immediately got someone who thinks of you even though they don't know you. So I think that's what's important.
Yeah, I think the faceless accounts make a lot of sense for just as it depends on who you are as a personality, right?
Mhm.
And then that's even kind of like what we do at Bookum is we allow audio to be a space because some people may be like,
Mhm.
okay, I don't want to do the show my face online, but I have no problem having really intricate and community conversations online. So just giving people a variety to allow
Yeah.
them to post the best they can.
Mhm.
And speaking of that, like, have you ever been been nervous about posting something but like was ended up being really grateful for it because it did well, or how do you think about posting things when you're kind of nervous about showing that much of yourself?
Um, yeah, I think the most nervous I've been to post is usually when it's quite not vulnerable but specific to like mental health. I think that I've always, because I've been online since I was 11, I literally posted like through my worst years. So it's not that the topic that scares me, but more so personal stories of what I've been through. And I don't think that's because I'm sharing it to so many people. I think that's because I have family following me, and you say certain things and you think, oh God, have I not said this to a friend? And a friend's going to be like, why haven't you told me this? Or even people from the past who maybe even caused some of those issues, seeing it's a really big possibility. And so I think for me it's more of a internal worry. But whenever I do post about it, because I do a lot on TikTok actually, it actually gets such a lovely response. It gets like a really, like, even from people who don't follow me, just kind of wishing you well. And I think like that's such a sweet, nice interaction that you may not find elsewhere. And also that fear kind of dissipates once it's up there, because it's up there and it can always come down if you want it to. So it's one of those things where it's just like, it's just me being silly and in my head kind of thing. So yeah, it's never because of the following, and I think that's usually why people get a bit nervous, but opposite for me.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's like you can talk to thousands of people and fear, have no fear, but then you have those four people that you care the most about, and it's like
Mhm.
you're stumbling over your words.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting how us as humans do that, right? You can
Yeah.
some people you might be nervous to talk to, and then some people you have zero fear, and I think that really translates to some of the success you've had on social media, as well as some of the things that you've been able to do for other people. So I kind of do want to go into chapters and pages and talk a little bit about your vision for that and how it got started.
Sure. So, I obviously going into the book community, I was like, seeing a lot of people, creators in like book talk, bookstagram, book threads, especially, booktube, kind of complaining about how, um, not even complaining, but just kind of mentioning how they love reading and they love writing, some of them, and they love posting, and they've created such a lovely, small, close knit community, or even a big, close knit community, but they have no idea how to monetize or how to do the business side of stuff. And I just saw it as a gap in the market. Like I'm the biggest fan of Shark Tank. It's so stupid. It's my favorite show on the planet. Like seriously, you could ask me any question about it, I will know the answer. It's really bad. And so I use terms like gap in the market because I think I know what I'm talking about when I don't. It's just Shark Tank. But they're always going on like Mark, the judge on, not the judge, the guy on Shark Tank. He's always like, you've like covered this gap in the market. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could so go on Shark Tank with this. Like they'd be so proud of me. And I was like, oh, this is actually something that doesn't exist. And I feel like also that's hard to come across these days, of something that doesn't exist. And I thought, I do this. So my full-time job, yes, is influencing, but it is also social media for brands. So I do it in the corporate space as well. And so I thought I actually have not just the knowledge, but the experience and qualifications to turn around and help people get to where I am, because also I only have 13,000 followers on Instagram. I have about 31,000 followers altogether across all social media. And that's really not that much relatively. I mean, I'm so grateful for it. And for me, it's massive. Um, but in the big grand scheme of things, there are so many influencers who have such larger audiences. And even in the book talk space, it's not uncommon to come across big creators. But I have monetized it, and that's the difference. It's like I've learned how to make a business from it. And I think that's where people get confused and are lacking, because it's not their wheelhouse. And that's fine, but I thought, you know what, let me just step in and help people. And a bunch of my clients actually have way more followers than me, so that's really cool. But yeah, it's achieving exactly what I wanted it to achieve, which is interesting. It's really fun.
No, I think you're doing great work, and it's similar to like how we thought about Bookum as well, because we are book content creators. We've had those moments where we've helped authors become, bestsellers, and we've been able to do a lot of things in the space, like whether it comes to collaboration with creators. And what we are finding out is that a lot of times creators are the last people in the space to get any monetization,
Mhm.
just because of they people say, oh, they have a big following, sell my book, right? And so
Mhm.
what we are able to do is what we've been focusing on is like giving content creators a platform to monetize as well. So like even when we're
Yeah.
talking with you, it's like it makes a lot of sense to work talk to someone that understands this at a high level, because again, content creators in the space do deserve to have some type of monetization, whether it's selling books, whether it's having book clubs where they can monetize. So there's a lot that goes into that. So like when it comes to creator deals, like how do you engage like good partnerships versus bad ones?
Oh, I've had my fair share of bad ones, but I think the really good thing about me is I stand my ground. I will fight tooth and nail if it means teaching someone to not disrespect me in a professional environment. I think that comes from so many things, but I've never worked for anyone else in my life. I started working when I was 16, and I was doing tarot full time. And then after a couple of years, I started doing my influencing full time. And ever since, I've just been self-employed, which is a really, lucky position to be in. But I think because of that, I've learned to not take anything from anyone. So I think the way I go about it is I find brands and uh, companies that I just resonate with. Like, I think the first thing I ever did was I looked around my room and I was just like, okay, where do all of these things come from? Like, where have I bought from? And I've actually been able to get partnerships with people I've done that with. Um, and I think if you are genuine in reaching out, I think a lot of people will think that you're not, but the right people will see there's a genuineness in your reaching out and your page if they bother to look at it. I think you'll just find the right people to collaborate with. I think it just happens. I think everyone that I have collaborated with in a paid work environment has meant to like it's meant to be, because I just think I wouldn't have tolerated it otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's good, and it kind of reminds me of how you think of stocks too, like in the sense of like you invest in the stock that you all use a lot, right? So if you
Mhm.
have an iPhone and you love the iPhone, you buy it, right? But it's the same thing when you're talking about with a creator, where it's like, okay, I drink blah 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 company all the time. Why would I not then go see if I can create a partnership, create some user generated content for them, figure out a way that it makes sense? So I think what you're saying has a lot of like, makes a lot of sense when it comes to how creators should think about it, regardless if they have an agent or not. Like, how can I figure out what companies to work with best?
Yeah, and I think also like people who follow you can tell when a partnership is genuine and when it's just, oh, I'm getting paid. So I think like a lot of mine started out, I was really passionate about making the content because it was my first time, but it wasn't my favorite companies. Whereas now I'm at a point where I can make content with some of my favorite companies, and I get really heartwarming messages of like, you used to shop there when you were a teenager and now you're working with them, and that's crazy. And it's like, well, yeah, I love what I do and I reach out to people that I love on purpose.
Yep. And then so now that the algorithm's changing a little bit, as far as like Instagram, now I could post whatever and it could go viral, or it's not as much as my follower count matters, right? What matters is the piece of content itself. So when
Mhm.
it comes to that, like how do you think about the algorithm and also like versus having like a membership space or email list where your content's going to all those people directly?
I think everything has its pros and cons. Like, I think with Instagram at first, I mean, the algorithm has been the way that you've just described for about a year or so.
Yeah.
And at first, I hated it. I couldn't stand it because I had 12,000 followers and nothing was being pushed out to those people. And I thought, how am I going to get paid for this? Like, how am I meant to make this my job if Instagram isn't doing its job, basically? Um, but I think now it's actually allowed space for me to create content that I enjoy. Like, I'm not just creating for people who follow me. I've always created for me, but I've also always wanted people who follow me to resonate with it. And I think now that that space is opened, that you can post and it can just go viral and reach anyone. I think that's given creators a bit more freedom, which is what I enjoy. Saying that, I have also taken advantage of those other platforms, like you said, like Substack, for example, is a massive one for me. And just in general, other platforms that are for certain people and subscribers and things like that. I think those are always going to be good. And I think they're always going to be maintainable and sustainable because, if you have people who look up to you in your work and you're providing them with something that has like a substance, I think they're always gonna follow and they're always gonna be engaged. So it's about keeping that up, but that's on the creator. So I think both kinds of platforms are equally as integral.
Yeah, so it's really changed from like like I said, more of a following graph to interest graph. So like now when it comes to books, like you can post a book that you resonated with and you sell it well or you explain it well and it can go viral. You've seen that a lot with whether it's Colin Hoover on TikTok or Emily Henry kind of always had a big footprint in the
Mhm.
Instagram space, but now she's been able to really grow bigger because of that.
Mhm.
And doing that, like, do you get a lot of advanced reader copies? And then when it comes to that, like, how do you gauge, like, all right, I need to, sell this one? I guess not sell, but rather share this one out to the world versus like, I'm getting bombarded with just requests every week.
Yeah, it's definitely the last one. I mean, that's one next to my lovely Timothy cut out is that's one pile. I've got another four on the floor. It's literally 200 books, and that's not including e-arcs or audio arcs. And it's insane. It's really like reached a point where I'm like, I think I have a problem. Um, I think one thing I've learned, like at first when I started to get accepted onto all of this stuff, I was like, take anything. I'll literally take anything. And then now that it's getting to this point, I'm a bit like, okay, slow down. And I've learned to say no. Like you can say no. You know, books are going to be around forever, and even if you don't get them free forever, you will always have access to them one way or another. Like there's certain sites where you can always get them for free. And so it's like I'm not I don't want to do it out of fear anymore. Like I don't want to do that anymore. And also I can't keep up. I physically cannot keep up. And I think with like sharing it, it's also really hard because I've got so many. I don't have the time to read all that right now. But the good thing is that some of them, I would say a good majority of them actually get sent to me just because, and like they don't actually want me to like, they don't need me to like avidly post about it. Whereas some have they're so strict. They're like, today this review is due, you need to post by today. I'm like, dude, you're not paying me, like please, like I can't read at that at that pace. And also like they're very aware that because we're on their list, they're aware that we're on other lists, which means we get books from all those other lists. So they're aware that we get other deadlines. And it's like, you need to chill out. Like, please chill out. And it's something that I've just learned to turn around and say, I don't read that fast. You know, I'll post when I post. And also, if you want a dedicated post by this time, that's fine. But you'll have to know that it may not be a review because I may not have finished it. So it will be like the blurb and like what I'm thinking going into reading it. So it will be a different angle. And I think they've just accepted that at this point because I think everyone's seen my piles of books and it's just crazy. But yeah, like learning to say no in general is really big, and in this space as an influencer is really important. And I think like someone sent me like loads of audio arcs that I could download, and I didn't download one because I was like, none of these feel like they're for me. Like I don't feel like I want to read any of them. So I'll pass this month, then we'll see next month on your new arcs. So I think it's just, you know what you like to read, you know what you like. So just do what you like to read. And if it comes with free arcs and it comes with posting and it comes with PR, great, it's a bonus.
Yeah, have you seen the movie The Other Guys?
Yes, I have.
All right, so when you're talking, it reminded me of that one scene where that guy Urshan keeps giving them free stuff, and the first time you get it, you're just like super hyped. You're like, oh wow, we're going here. The second
Yeah.
time, you're like, wow, even better, we're going to the play. Third time, you're like, this is getting a little overwhelming. And I think sometimes with the advanced reader arc, it feels like that in the sense of like you don't want to say no because you're like, wow, I can't believe this publisher is sending me little,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes like little old me is getting this book and it's advanced and you
Yeah.
don't want to say no. But then on the back end, you have to realize that again, you're doing a lot of work for them. And no
All
matter
for
what, it's like
free.
you're still doing it for a company that has the resources to give influencers their
Mm-hmm.
share. Like I was talking to Sarah Hildreth from Fiction Matters, and she had a really good idea about how influencers could get paid. Where it's like, hey, we know that these 60 books are coming out in the first quarter of the year. You can do. It's kind of like she said the Sephora method, where you can pick from that list of the books you are actually interested in reviewing. You review those books, and then they give you a stipend or whatever. I think that makes a lot of sense for
Oh,
creators,
for sure.
especially for what you do. I think if you could set up those deals for your influencers, I think that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense, and it opens it back up to content creators having a space to monetize in this space. Otherwise, they'll keep, and I just think that's the way you'll keep getting, I don't use the word exploited, but whatever you want to call it over
Yeah,
time in this space.
for sure. I completely agree. And I also think some people, not me, but some people are afraid that once they are on those lists and get those arcs, that they have to give good reviews. And I think like I'm someone who's like, nah, I hated that. Burn it, like throw it away. And the thing is what I've learned from that as well is that they don't get turned off from giving you books. They don't. So there's nothing to worry about. It's just your reading taste. They're literally in this industry. They are so aware that people have different tastes and different like things they enjoy. So it's really important to like you said, have that monetization, but also be authentic and just read what you want to read. And if you don't like something, it's okay to say you don't like it. It's a book. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I actually think it's even more of what you're saying. I think it's important to say when you don't like a book,
Yeah.
because again, people follow Mia for her taste, right? So
Mhm.
you may say, I don't like this book, but when you explain it, people are like, wow, that sounds exactly like the book I want to read next. So
Exactly.
you kind of saying I didn't like this book might be what opens up someone to go down that path and explore that
Exactly.
book in a different way.
Exactly. I've had that with a friend of mine who's quite big on bookstagram, where I was like, I got this arc, I hated it. And she was like, that's my favorite author. And I was like, oh God. But like when we post about it, it's not like a, oh, you hate this person, I love this person. It's like a funny thing of like, our tastes are quite different. And I love that. And that's really cool. And we can have intellectual conversations over it.
Yeah, and I think we do the same thing with movies or music. Like if I say I don't like a band, it's might be because hey, this sound or this whatever, you might critique it from there. Or if you're watching a movie, you're like, hey, that third act close was very interesting. I don't know if I agreed with it. But I think
Yeah,
the more we have those honest conversations with the books we read, it gives the genre space to have, more unique conversations and depth as
exactly.
well.
Yeah. And I feel like we do have those conversations about movies and music because we don't have niche communities the way we do with books.
Yeah.
I think there's less of a preciousness about it. And even being, I'm a film degree grad. So I'm so judgmental when it comes to movies, like really, really judgmental. But I feel like I can have those conversations really easily where I think people are more afraid in the book space to do that.
No, I think that's well said. Let's switch over to your coffee corners. Can you
Mhm.
share about it, like its importance? If you don't mind, can you talk into some of the other subjects you all talk in that are a little bit? I think I want to make sure I'm getting it right. So it's PCOS and then endos. Okay, just making
Yeah,
sure.
endometriosis. Yeah. So basically, I like I said, like with the gap in the market kind of thing, I noticed that there are so many influencers, some that I follow and am even friends with, um, just but more so that I'm not, that they post about being an it girl and that girl and main character and like all these like hyper um internal and like personal um trends and aesthetics. And it's like I initially loved that because I felt like finally we're kind of looking inwards and not outwards, and we can kind of make it our own. But then I think it kind of just tumbled into what everything else is online. And I found an issue with promoting this lifestyle that's just not maintainable for a normal person. If you don't have, 100K a year minimum coming in, just you, I think you're looking at this and you're like, well, I don't have the nice backsplash in my kitchen. And I don't have like the massive ring light that costs 200 quid. And it's like, it's so unrealistic. And I hated that because I think the concept was actually, it had a good, kind of intention. Um, so I opened up Coffee Corner with the intention of, hey, like this trend, this theme, this idea of being the best version of yourself, aka it girl or main character, um, is maintainable and sustainable in these ways. So it was kind of like you can be all this whilst being all this. So for example, I grew up really poor. It was really bad and not the worst kind of situation you'd think about, but it was bad. And I just remember like literally I had to live off of clothes that I had for years and live off of charity clothes. So like, you know, clothes that literally cost £1. And I just thought like I got from that to here, yes, with hard work, but also I'm still not a millionaire, you know, nowhere near, absolutely nowhere near. So it's like I feel like I've maintained a lifestyle that I like, and I came from minimal. And so if I can do that, anyone can do that. So we talk a lot about yes, PCOS, endometriosis. So those are ovarian chronic conditions that I grew up with and still have. And I was in and out of hospital, hospitalized overnight. They didn't know what was wrong with me at certain points, but I've been diagnosed since I was 14. Medication this, medication that, change the medication every few years. It is mental torture. And it's actually quite spoken about online, which is great. But I also wanted to be like, you can still be a main character and be disabled, and you can still be a main character and be queer, and you can still be a main character and hate Colleen Hoover. It's okay, I promise, to have an opinion. So yeah, we talk about a bunch of things. I have about, I want to say like 8 other writers with me. They talk about recipes, like food, and like in a way of like, we had my food writer Bella wrote a piece on where it's cheap to eat in the UK, but it's also decent food. So it was like, you know, it's things like that where it's encouraging people to look at alternative ways to get where they want to get, and ways that are realistic and not gonna like literally make your bank have a meltdown. So yeah, it's been lovely, and I hope we're doing I hope we're doing what I intended to do with it. But it's formed a little community which has been so lovely.
Yeah, thank you first just for telling your story. I really do appreciate you, and then just shining light on things, especially with what you all are doing. So when it comes to your writing, and how do you go about telling your story, or what do you like to write about, or how do you kind of bring that part of it in? Because I think voice is really important when it comes to
Mhm.
writing and what you say.
For sure. I think like mostly my section of it is like lifestyle in general.
Okay.
So it's not as themed. And I write a lot about my experience at the moment with PTSD because I'm currently getting that diagnosed. And I find it interesting because I think, like I said before, you know, you get that nervousness of, oh God, if I post this to thousands of people and that one person sees it, and it's like, this is a controlled environment. So this is the pro of those controlled environments. And I feel like they are like me sharing my stories of like PTSD and experiencing emotional abuse and things like that. It's opened up not just a safe space for me, but safe space for other people. So they're like comfortable, not even to share, but just to like read and to just feel. I think like that's the most important thing, is like when you read something, you want to feel something. So it's not just like another email newsletter. It's not just another something you're subscribed to. It's something that has had emotion poured into it, not just from me, but all my other writers as well, even if they are just talking about food. So yeah, it's an emotional newsletter, but it's also a really positive newsletter at the same time.
Yeah, I love it. And then what is your writing process like? Are you a morning person, or how do you? Because
Oh
writing
God.
is, yeah, I say writing is so tough, but you have to really sit down, no distractions. I think so. I'm always curious to hear how people go about writing and stuff like that.
You know what? It's hard. It's really hard. Um, I think also because the reason I'm talking about my PTSD so much on my newsletter is because it actually, so science like wise, scientifically, um, there you go, writer right there. Um, Scientifically, PTSD stops your brain from functioning the way that it used to. So prior to the events that caused my PTSD, I could write like nobody's business. I wrote like 6 novels in 2 years, and I'm to this day I'm so happy with them. Like I love them. I think they're brilliant, and I hope they reach the world at some point. Um, but ever since the PTSD events, I haven't been able to write a single book. And so it has been really hard for me to just sit down and write. It felt very foreign, even though that was who I was and my identity and what I did well. And so that's why I'm talking about it so much, because I'm like, this is a community of writers and I cannot write. This is ridiculous. And the doctors are like, this is ridiculous. We need to get this diagnosed. But I want to share that, like, it's, you know, writer's block and stuff. It's so normal, but also it's like, there are also psychological reasons behind it that we don't even like realize. Like there's so like you could just be like in a different mood to the week before and not write anything for a month, and it's like, why this, why? And it's just like psychologically sometimes those things just happen. I think also we need to realize that writers are also a massive form of creatives. You know, it's the same as artists. Like my mum's an artist, you know, she goes through massive creative blocks, and I just look at her and I'm like, same, me too. Like I think we all just have psychological blocks that we need to talk about more. So that's a big theme that I've been speaking about with Coffee Corner. So usually if I can write more than a sentence, I write. It doesn't matter where I am or what I'm doing. If I'm on the toilet, I'm writing on my notes app and I'm copying it into my laptop later. And sometimes like I think for Coffee Corner, because it's bi-weekly, I like wrote so much at once. I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. I'm back. And then like this, I have a Coffee Corner coming out on Monday and it's Friday and I haven't written anything. And I'm like, yep, I expected this. This is great. This is fab. So I don't have a process. If I write, I write. And I think every writer will go through this as well, where it's like you're drifting off to sleep and then you think of a sentence that's like so like good and you're like, I need to write this down, and then you're like half asleep writing it in your notes app and the light is hurting your eyes, and it's like, this is the life of a writer, basically. This is it. So I don't think there's a process. I think there's a lack thereof, if anything.
Yeah, I agree. Because even with me, it's like I'll block off a certain amount of time, or outside of what you're doing. Like obviously, if creativity runs, then you're just like I'm doing it. But otherwise, block off a set of time, and I'm like, you don't have to write, but you literally have to sit here and figure out if you want to. You can twiddle your thumbs, but eventually you're gonna have to go write. And I think when you just sit yourself down and you're like, all right, I'm just gonna sit here and I'm forcing myself to do it. Eventually you get that first piece down, or like you go and look and read it and you try to edit something, you're like, okay, now I'm back into it. It's writing's so weird like that. It's just like it's there's nothing and then automatic there's something. Like it's a unique thing. Let's get into you as a reader, and then we'll kind of wrap up. Like, what have you been reading lately? Like as far as what was the last book you read? What are you currently reading? And then what are you planning to read next?
How much time do you have? So I made a post about how I've gotten into mood reading, because I didn't realize that mood reading basically was like you can pick up several books at once. I don't know why my brain was like, I'm just going to read one book at a time. I thought it would be overwhelming, but turns out that's how my brain works and it loves it. So I'm reading like 4 books at once, and I bet the publishers are like salivating as they hear this. So I just finished today the audiobook for No Longer Human by Osamu Daze, and I'm at the like last few pages of the arc of Hera by Jennifer Saint, and then I'm currently reading, so I'm still at the beginning of Midnight Pleasure by Claudio Adotti, which is also an arc, and then Everything You've Ever Wanted by Louisa Salma. I feel like out of all of these so far, Hera has been the best. I'm Greek, so I'm really judgmental when it comes to Greek mythology. Like everyone like literally like foams at the mouth when they talk about Greek mythology, and I'm like, you don't know anything. You don't know anything. I had my great granddad raise me like this. You have no idea. But I'm enjoying the flipping between stuff and the different types of like audio when you're in the mood for audio, ebook when you're in the mood for ebook, physical book when, you know, like that's just really, it's skyrocketed my numbers of reading at the moment. And then I've got so many to read, as you can / can't see. I mean, you can kind of see, well, you know, you can't really see like 4 other piles, but today I got sent I believe it's 2 arcs, When Haru Was Here by Dustin Tao, which is really cool because his first book made me sob. And then Brat by, I can't remember who it is, something Smith. I just remember they had a really basic surname. And the covers are just gorgeous and stunning. And I'm looking forward to them because I don't have a deadline. So I'm like, I'll pick this up whenever I want to pick this up. But yeah, if you want the full 200 plus, I can send that over to you. You know, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, send it through. Because I'm like you too. I enjoy reading. I can read multiple books at a time. Actually, I kind of prefer it, but they have to be in different genres, right? So,
Yes, yes.
if it's an audio book, I'm usually it's gonna be probably a biography because those books are so long. It's like if I
Yeah.
didn't have an audio book, it'd be hard for me to finish these 800
Yeah.
page biographies. And then if it's more of a business book, then I'll read that. And then I try to throw in like obviously a fiction book or something that's like very different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. It helps with balancing your taste during the time.
Yeah, for sure. I'm the same. Like I listen to a lot of um like financial books and like business books, I guess, with audiobooks. I just find that I would struggle to like stay awake. And then but I actually love listening to it. Like it's really interesting. And then I love having a physical romance. Like I just and the ebook as well, just perfect. But things like Hera that I'm currently reading are also really good with ebooks. Like I think they're better for me because I'm so on the fence about them that I'm like, it's good that this is not disposable for me because otherwise it would be in the sell box right now.
The way I love to end this podcast is it's a two-sided question, but you can have two different answers. So the first part of it is, what would you like to see more of in the book world?
Oof. Ah. Where do I begin? I want blurbs back on the back of books. When did we decide that that was a bad idea? Like, I've started to see like quotes instead, and I'm like, I want to know what the book is about, guys. Like, please, I don't want to have to like flip through everything to find that. And then also, I think a really big thing that I'd love to mention is I would love to see less high and mightiness in the industry. I think there's a lot of not just creators. I think there is a lot of creators that feel like, oh, I've got this many followers, so I am more important than you. But I think that's with influencers in general, but it does exist in the book community. But I also think like publishers as well, there's almost like a hierarchy of like, you're too young to publish a book and you're too this to do that. And it's like, well, why don't we just all get along, guys? Why don't we just all be friends? So I would love to just see like a level playing field, basically. I would just love to see people try to get along and love books for what we love books for and not just make it, you know, a trend or an argument. I think we should all like embrace our different opinions and different skills and just like raise that up and not bring it down. Plus blurbs. We need blurbs back. Like
Yeah,
blurbs, seriously, guys, back on the back
take
of
the
books, please.
blurbs back.
Yeah, it's so angering. Like someone recently sent me an arc and it doesn't even have the title on it. I'm like, what is this book called? How am I meant to know what I'm reading? This is crazy. It shouldn't be allowed, seriously.
They gave you a beta read, the sound like.
For real. I'm like, guys, a quick email. What is this?
I mean, you answered my second question. So thank you so much, Mia. Let us know what's coming up in your world that we can support or where we can find you.
Sure. So everything, all socials, I am Mia Caven, MIACAVEN. Chapters and pages is really, really exciting. We've got loads of new stuff coming, loads of exciting partnerships. I'm so excited to announce this month, including events if you're in the UK. Coffee Corner is going to continue to be out bi-weekly. I think I will write Coffee Corner until the day I die, even if it's alone. And then, yeah, I hope personally, I've got a lot of new content coming that I'm really excited about. And hopefully at some point, a book, maybe. That's the dream. Don't take my word for it. It's a dream. But that is a goal, hopefully in the further future that you guys will see from me.
Well, thank you so much, Mia. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And thank you again for being on the podcast.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.